Now the mechanism of action, step by step flow chart. Firstly, the EDTA blood is being hemolyzed by addition of the hemolyzed reagent and the RBCs are lysed. The hemoglobin releases into the aqueous solution. After that, the diluted hemolysate is auto-injected onto the cation exchange column under high pressure pump. After that, the hemoglobin variants bind to negatively charged resin via electrostatic attraction. The binding strength is proportional to the net positive charge of each hemoglobin variant. After that, the buffers of increasing sodium chloride concentration flows through the column. The sodium ions comparatively displaces hemoglobin variants from resin in order of binding strength. Then the eluted hemoglobin fractions pass through the spectrophotometric detector and absorbance is recorded at 415 nanometer in real time. Then the chromatogram is generated. The time axis shows retention time and the y-axis is plotted for the absorbance. Each hemoglobin fraction appears as a peak with a characteristic retention time. That is, each hemoglobin fraction has a characteristic retention time that the machine knows that we know. After that, the software integrates peak areas, that is percentage each fraction peak area is divided by total area into 100. This all formulations is done by the machine only and it flags abnormal results and prints the final report. Now in this slide there is a conceptual diagram about the fetal hemoglobin, adult hemoglobin and the HbA2. Now the fetal hemoglobin, it shows weakest ionic bond because it has least positive charge. So the lowest ionic strength buffer will elute fetal hemoglobin first. That is, by around 1 minute the fetal hemoglobin is coming out from the HPLC column. After that, the adult hemoglobin will come out because it shows intermediate ionic bond. Hence, a moderate ionic strength buffer will elute adult hemoglobin at the second place after the fetal hemoglobin. In the last, the HbA2 will come out because it shows strongest ionic bond. So, highest ionic strength buffer will elute HbA2 in the last, which is showing a retention time of around 3.7 minutes. So what is retention time? Retention time is the time from sample injection to the peak maximum on chromatogram. To the peak maximum because till the last amount of that hemoglobin fraction which is coming out of the HPLC column. It is a characteristic for each hemoglobin fraction under standardized conditions. Factors which affect the retention time are buffer ionic strength gradient profile, column temperature that should be controlled between 35 to 40 degrees centigrade and the flow rate of the mobile phase. There is characteristic retention time for each hemoglobin fraction. Hence, for fetal hemoglobin it is around 0.9 to 1.1 minute. For adult hemoglobin it is around 2.4 to 2.6 minutes. For HbA2 it is around 3.6 to 3.8 minute. And likewise, the different structural variants of hemoglobin also show different RT windows. But here you can see that HbD and HbS, they show same retention time window because both of these hemoglobin variants come at the same time. And also HbE and HbA2, they also co-elute, that is, they also come out at the same time. Hence, HbD and HbS share identical retention time. That is why HPLC cannot distinguish them and we have to perform sickling test or the molecular studies for confirmation. HbS will show positive sickling test and HbD is negative for the sickling test. Now the peak area under curve is equal to the total amount of that hemoglobin fraction. The percentage hemoglobin is equal to peak area divided by the total area into 100. Sum of all fractions should be 100%. Peak morphology should be symmetrically narrow peak. If there is a broad or asymmetric peak, or if there is a shoulder on peak, then we should suspect that there is some possible coelution of two variants, or there is a minor variant coeluting alongside. Software will show flags and alerts if there is a probable HbS. It will show a peak in S window. It will report HB variant present if there is an unknown peak outside the known windows is present. It can also show check HbA2 window if there is HbE is likely co-eluting with the HbA2, and it will show HbF elevated if HbF is more than 2% in adult sample. This is a normal adult HPLC chromatogram which is showing normal adult hemoglobin around 96 to 98%. This is major adult hemoglobin, that is alpha 2 beta 2, containing 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains, and it shows HbA2 of around 2.5 to 3.5%, that is alpha 2 delta 2 chains are present in HbA2, and in HbF it is less than 1%, and it has alpha 2 gamma 2 chains. Each hemoglobin fraction elutes in a defined RT window. This one is the RT window for HbF. Likewise, this from here to here is the retention time window for the adult hemoglobin, and this one is for the HbA2. If there is any deviation from these windows, then suspect any variant. So how should we interpret the HPLC report? In the HPLC report, there is patient information of name, age, sex, clinical indications. The sample type is mentioned like EDTA, whole blood, and the adequacy of the sample should be reported. The adult hemoglobin percentage should be mentioned. HbA2 level is very much important because it should be between 2.5 to 3.5%, and if more than 3.5% is reported, then beta thalassemia trait can be suspected. If fetal hemoglobin is elevated more than 1%, then it can show a suspicion of thalassemia or hereditary persistence of fetal hemoglobin. The variant peaks can be shown in the HPLC chromatogram, and these variant peaks are flagged by the machine. The total hemoglobin fraction is given as 100%. The total of all the hemoglobin variant should be around 100%. The machine sometimes show flags or alerts if it finds any abnormal pattern. The chromatogram, that is the visual plot of time versus absorption, should always be reviewed by the pathologist. So the checklist, what are the checklist? In step 1, we should always check HbA2 level. If it is more than 3.5%, then beta thalassemia trait is suspected. We should check HbF level. If more than 2%, then we should investigate the cause and look for variant peaks. If any unknown retention time peak is seen, then we should report it as variant. And the HPLC report should always be correlated with the CBC, and the total area and the total percentage of all the hemoglobin fraction should be around 100%. If not, then there is some quality issue, or we should repeat the test. We should always review the raw chromatogram for peak if there is some peak shape or shoulder or flag is coming. For the diagnosis of beta thalassemia trait, the chromatogram shows HbF level is mildly elevated, HbA2 level is more than 3.5%, and adult hemoglobin is reciprocally reduced. The CBC shows low MCV, low MCH, hemoglobin usually normal, and RDW is normal. The peripheral smear shows microcytic hypochromic RBCs, target cells, and poikilocytosis. Genetic counseling is essential for beta thalassemia. For beta thalassemia measure, the HbF level is very much elevated, that is more than 60 to 90%. The adult hemoglobin is absent or markedly reduced. HbA2 level is usually elevated. In CBC, the hemoglobin is less than 7 grams per deciliter. MCV is markedly low. MCH is also very much low. The nucleated RBCs can appear in peripheral smear. The patients are transfusion dependent and show severe to moderate anemia. Hepatosplenomegaly is present. There can be bone changes and growth retardation. In case of beta thalassemia intermedia, the HbF is elevated but not as much high as in beta thalassemia major. The adult hemoglobin is slightly reduced and HbA2 level is also slightly increased. So you can see the HbF level is around 10 to 40%. Adult hemoglobin is reduced but present around 20 to 60%. HbA2 level is usually elevated between 4 to 6%. The causes may be mild beta thalassemia mutations, beta thalassemia with alpha thalassemia, delta beta thalassemia, and heterozygous beta thalassemia with hereditary persistence of fetal hemoglobin. The hemoglobin can be between 7 to 10 grams per deciliter, and the patient may not be always transfusion dependent. There can be some splenomegaly and bone changes present. The patient may remain compensated without transfusion and can require molecular workup for exact genotyping. Now HPLC is also helpful in the diagnosis of delta beta thalassemia and HPFH, that is hereditary persistence of fetal hemoglobin. In case of delta beta thalassemia, the HbF level is high, that is around 15%, 10 to 20% or 15%. The HbA2 level is low to normal and adult hemoglobin is also reduced. You can see here it is reduced than the normal adult hemoglobin. In case of HPFH, it is of two types, heterocellular and pancellular. In heterocellular type, the HbF level is around 5 to 15%, and in case of pancellular type, it is more than 25%. In both of these types, the HbA2 level is normal and adult hemoglobin level is reduced or mildly reduced. Now for the diagnosis of HbE trait and HbE disease. In case of HbE trait, the HbE level is around 30 to 38%. HbA, that is adult hemoglobin, is around 59 to 65% and fetal hemoglobin is less than 1%. In case of HbE disease, the HbE level is 85 to 95%. Adult hemoglobin is very much reduced or absent and HbF level is slightly elevated. There is one problem in diagnosis of HbE by HPLC, because HbE and HbA2, both of these hemoglobin variants co-elutes at the same time, that is they share the same RT window. Here in this case you can see that this peak is coming due to both HbA2 and HbE level. So we cannot separate HbA2 and HbE by HPLC alone. We have to do some other studies also. Now for the diagnosis of compound heterozygous types, which are very much common in eastern part of India, that is for the diagnosis of HbE and beta thalassemia. In these cases, due to beta thalassemia, the HbF level is high, and due to HbE, the HbE level is elevated, and proportionately the adult hemoglobin level is reduced. So you can see here that HbE is around 50 to 80%, HbF is 10 to 40%, and adult hemoglobin is absent or less than 10%. And the severity will depend upon the type of mutation of the beta gene. If it is beta plus mutation, then the disease will be of milder form, and if it is a beta naught type of beta gene mutation, then there will be the severe form of the disease. So in case of HbE and beta plus mutation, which can be mild or moderate, then the severity of anemia will also be mild anemia or moderate anemia. And if it is HbE with beta naught type of mutation of beta gene, then there will be severe anemia and hemoglobin will be around 5 to 7 grams per deciliter. Now HPLC in sickle cell disease and other hemoglobin variants. In sickle cell disease, HbS level is elevated along with fetal hemoglobin. Adult hemoglobin is low, HbA2 level is also around normal level. You can see here that in sickle cell disease, HbS is around 85 to 92%, HbF is elevated and adult hemoglobin is low to absent. In sickle cell trait, HbA level is around 60%, HbS 38, HbA2 and fetal hemoglobins are normal. In HbD or hemoglobin Punjab, in this case HbA level is around 60%, there is also HbD which is around 38% and HbA2 level is normal. For HbD, there is a problem in that HbS and HbD both elute at the same RT time, that is around 4.3 to 4.5 minutes. Hence HPLC cannot distinguish between HbS and HbD. For that we have to do sickling test, which is positive in HbS disease, that is sickle cell disease, and is negative in HbD. And we can also confirm the diagnosis by some molecular studies. In the same manner, if HbC disease is present, then we can see HbC at RT around 5 minutes. In case of alpha thalassemia, there will be HbH peak at around 0.7 minutes, that comes even before HbF. If the patient has both beta thalassemia and HbS, then how can we distinguish this compound heterozygous state from the sickle cell disease? We can distinguish it by the level of HbA2, because HbA2 level will be elevated in compound heterozygous state of beta thalassemia with HbS, and it will be normal in sickle cell disease. HPLC has a very limited role in diagnosis of alpha thalassemia. Why? Because the silent carrier and the alpha thalassemia trait. In these two cases, the HPLC will show normal pattern. But in case of HbH disease, there will be HbH peak at retention time around 0.7 minutes, which comes even before HbF peak. On CBC, we can see moderate hemolytic anemia and hemoglobin around 7 to 10 grams per deciliter. HbH disease can be confirmed by molecular studies. In case of HB-Bart hydrops, which is a condition, which is a very severe condition of alpha thalassemia, in which it is incompatible with extrauterine life. It shows HB-Bart peak on HPLC, and on CBC there will be severe anemia in fetus and there will be hydrops fetalis. So it is helpful in the prenatal diagnosis of this condition. What are the advantages of HPLC in hemoglobinopathy diagnosis? HPLC has advantage because it has a very rapid turnaround time. It gives result in just 5 to 7 minutes per sample. It is a fully automated technique. It reduces human errors significantly. It is a quantitative technique because it quantifies HbA, HbA2 and HbF and other variants as percentage, and is very much essential for monitoring treatment response like hydroxyurea therapy treatment response in sickle cell disease. It is a highly sensitive technique because it can detect minor hemoglobin fractions at less than 0.5% concentration and can detect HbH, HB-Bart and other variants which are generally not seen on electrophoresis. The reproducibility of this technique is also very good because the coefficient of variation is less than 2% for HbA2 and HbF. It helps in simultaneous detection and quantification of all hemoglobin fractions in a single run. So no need for separate alkaline and acid electrophoresis. It requires very small amount of blood. Hence, only 1 to 2 ml of EDTA blood can be used for this technique and can be used for neonates and infants also. It is very helpful in screening and diagnosis and is used for newborn screening, prenatal diagnosis, carrier detection and monitoring simultaneously in one platform. Now the limitations and pitfalls of HPLC. So there are various limitations of HPLC like any other technique. Out of that, the most important is the co-elution of variants. That is, we know that HbS and HbD share the same RT window, and in the same manner HbE co-elutes with HbA2, that is, they also share the same RT window. Hence, to differentiate HbS and HbD, we should perform the sickling test and do the molecular studies. In case of alpha thalassemia trait, the silent carrier and the 2 gene deletion alpha thalassemia trait can be missed or not detected by HPLC, because in HPLC there will be normal HPLC pattern along with microcytic anemia and normal iron studies. So to confirm the alpha thalassemia trait, we should perform gap PCR or MLPA for alpha globin gene deletions. In neonatal interpretation, in neonates, we know that HbF is high up to 6 months, which is very much similar to beta thalassemia major. Hence, in case of neonates, we should perform HPLC after 3 to 6 months of age. In case of iron deficiency anemia, the iron deficiency reduces HbA2 level into its normal range and may falsely exclude beta thalassemia trait. Hence, we should always check serum iron or ferritin level before interpreting HbA2 level. The new or the rare variants may be misidentified. Why? Because the rare hemoglobin variants may co-elute with known fractions or appear in the expected windows in HPLC. The software assigns variants to nearest known window, which may be incorrect. So what is the solution for that? So we should perform capillary electrophoresis and molecular studies. It is a expensive technique because it requires expensive equipments, and the running cost is also very high. It requires maintenance, calibration, quality control, and sometimes there is shift in RT windows due to the degradation of column, the HPLC column, which leads to misidentification of HB variants. Now the diagnostic algorithm for hemoglobinopathies. First, we should take clinical history and perform CBC and peripheral smear, and we should check for MCV, MCH, RDW, reticulocyte count, and iron studies can also be done to rule out iron deficiency anemia. After that, we can do HPLC for screening and quantification. In HPLC finding, we can see if there is elevated HbA2 level more than 3.5%, then we can suspect beta thalassemia trait. If HbF level is more than 2%, then we can investigate the cause. If we are seeing a variant peak, then we have to identify what is the cause of that peak. If there is normal HPLC findings along with microcytosis on peripheral smear, then we can suspect alpha thalassemia. We can also perform some confirmatory tests like sickling test, capillary electrophoresis, Heinz body prep, or osmotic fragility test. We can also do molecular studies. If we are suspecting alpha thalassemia deletions, then we can go for gap PCR. If we want to check gene copy number, then we can do multiplex ligation dependent probe analysis. If common beta mutations for beta thalassemia is suspected and we want to check it, then we can do ARMS PCR. And in some rare variants of hemoglobinopathies, we can also perform Sanger sequencing. For final diagnosis and counseling, if we are suspecting beta thalassemia trait and the disease has been confirmed, then we can do genetic counseling, partner testing, and prenatal diagnosis if both parents are beta thalassemia trait positive. In case of beta thalassemia major, we can plan transfusion programs, chelation therapy, or hematopoietic stem cell transplantation. In case of sickle cell disease, we can plan hydroxyurea therapy, and we can prevent the crisis due to the sickling of RBCs. And in case of heterozygous, compound heterozygous individuals, we can perform molecular genotyping and can do prognosis counseling. Now, applications of HPLC in hematology. It is useful in hemoglobinopathy screenings like hemoglobinopathies of HbS, HbC, HbE, HbD variants. It is a gold standard for sickle cell and compound heterozygous states used in mass newborn screening programs. It is used in thalassemia diagnosis because it quantifies HbA2 level. We know that if it is more than 3.5, then beta thalassemia trait can be present. and it also quantifies HbF levels. It differentiates alpha and beta thalassemia, essential for carrier detection and prenatal counseling. It is helpful in measurement of HbA1c, most accurate method for glycated hemoglobin quantification. It is unaffected by labile HbA1c levels. It is useful in detection of rare Hb variants like HbH, Hb Bart, Hb Lepore and other rare variants at less than 0.5% concentration. It is useful in neonatal screening of certain hemoglobinopathies, and only a very small amount of blood like 1 to 2 ml EDTA sample from cord blood or heel prick samples can be used in HPLC. It is used in treatment monitoring because it can track HbF rise with hydroxyurea therapy in sickle cell disease. It also monitors transfusion dependent patients in thalassemia also. It is useful in prenatal diagnosis support because it is used alongside molecular testing to identify carrier couples at risk. It quantifies HbF in fetal blood samples and supports genetic counseling decisions. It is used for simultaneous quantification of HbA, HbA2, HbF, HbS, HbC and other fractions in a single 5 to 7 minute runs and eliminates need for dual electrophoresis platforms. Now here are some applications of HPLC in clinical pathology and biochemistry. So the first application of HPLC in pathology and biochemistry is urine protein analysis. It helps to quantify albumin, alpha-1 microglobulin, alpha-2 microglobulin, IgG levels, and also detects Bence-Jones proteinuria. It is also helpful in serum protein fractionation studies. It is also used for CSF analysis. It can detect the oligoclonal bands and abnormal protein fractions in CSF. Used in demyelinating disorders like multiple sclerosis and sensitive for IgG index calculation. It is used for porphyrin and bile analysis. It separates porphyrins in urine and feces for porphyria diagnosis. Quantifies bile acids for hepatic function assessment. High resolution for similar compounds. It is used for nucleic acid and nucleotide analysis also. It separates DNA and RNA fragments, nucleotides and purines, used in research on purine metabolism disorders like gout, Lesch-Nyhan syndrome, etc. It is also used for drug and therapeutic drug monitoring for immunosuppressants like cyclosporine, tacrolimus, and antibiotics and antiepileptics. Precise plasma and serum drug quantification is also done by HPLC. It is also helpful in vitamin and hormone assays. It quantifies water-soluble vitamins like vitamin B12, folate and B6, and also it helps in quantification of fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E and K. It measures steroid hormones with high specificity. It is also used for toxicology and metabolomics studies. It detects toxic metabolites in inborn errors of metabolism, used in amino acid profiling, and is essential in newborn metabolic screening. Now some high-yield viva questions. What is the principle of cation exchange? Now some high-yield viva questions and answers. What is the principle of cation exchange HPLC? The principle is that a negatively charged resin attracts positively charged hemoglobin. Differential ionic interaction leads to different retention times. Hence, gradient elution using increasing sodium chloride buffer displaces hemoglobin fraction sequentially. Why is HbA2 elevated in beta thalassemia trait? Because there is reduced beta chain production, which leads to relative excess of delta chain and hence more HbA2, because HbA2 is alpha to delta 2 chains. Also, delta gene expression is relatively upregulated. The normal HbA2 level is 2.5 to 3.5%, but in beta thalassemia trait, HbA2 level is more than 3.5%. Why is fetal hemoglobin elevated in thalassemia? Because there is compensatory upregulation of gamma globin genes. Hence, more fetal hemoglobin is produced to compensate for reduced functional hemoglobin. Severity of fetal hemoglobin elevation correlates with the severity of thalassemia. Why can HPLC not distinguish HBS from HBD because HBS and HBD have identical retention times in cation exchange HPLC. Hence, they should be distinguished by Sickling test, which is positive in HBS and negative in HBD, or some molecular studies. How does iron deficiency affects HPLC? Iron deficiency reduces HbA2 values in normal range, potentially masking beta thalassemia trait. Hence, we should always perform iron studies before interpreting HPLC, and we should treat iron deficiency and then repeat HPLC. Why is alpha thalassemia trait not detected by HPLC? Because in alpha thalassemia trait there is mild globin chain imbalance, but HbA2 and HbF remain normal. No abnormal hemoglobin peak is generated in HPLC. Hence, we should suspect alpha thalassemia if there is microcytic anemia with a normal HPLC report and normal iron profile. And we should confirm alpha thalassemia by gap PCR or MLPA. What is retention time and what determines it? Retention time is the time from sample injection into the HPLC column to peak maximum on chromatogram. It is determined by net positive charge of hemoglobin variant. More positive means longer retention time. Second is buffer ionic strength gradient and column temperature and the flow rate. What is significance of HbA2 window showing high percentage? If HbA2 is more than 3.5%, then it shows that beta thalassemia trait can be present. If HbA2 window shows 30 to 40%, then we should suspect HbE trait because HbE co-elutes with HbA2. HPLC cannot separate HbE from HbA2, hence we should confirm it by molecular studies. Thank you.